true that Iran could perpetrate an act of nuclear terrorism against us, right? I mean, they could smuggle a Hiroshima-sized device at some point into the states and blow it up in a major city. I mean, that's totally conceivable, and that would be awful and be the worst thing we've ever experienced. It would be much worse than 9/11 or anything else that has deranged us for decades at a stretch, right? So it's worth preventing at almost any cost, but it's not existential, right? So there is a difference between Israel and America here. But generally speaking, I think all open societies, not just Western societies, just all liberal open societies, have to be united against this possibility, which is in fact an inevitability if we don't do something about it, that a jihadist regime will acquire nuclear weapons. It's just we cannot let ourselves stumble into that situation. And above all, I think the Muslim world needs to understand that we can't let this come to pass. And I think many Muslim countries probably do. Whether they'll express it or not, they do agree with this point that Iran having the bomb is different from Israel or any other country having the bomb because of jihadism.
Yeah. I'm sometimes asked by people, including by Jews, why I have defended Israel. And the answer I give, and I really believe this, is that it's important to protect the good places in the world. Like if we go back, some of us don't have to go back very far in our family trees to find poor, struggling people leaving desperate places that are hopeless and coming basically to the West, basically to America, Canada, Western Europe, Australia, a few other countries that have sort of figured out a formula for human well-being that is the best one we have thus far discovered. And I think we have an obligation to protect those places, and I consider Israel such a place, and to minimize the influence of ideologies like communism and Islamism that have reliably produced pretty terrible societies to live in. To me, it's that simple.
Yeah.
Although, I with so much propaganda going around, it's actually hard to convince a skeptic that Israel is one of those places. Like the difference between Israel and Iran is akin to the difference between North Korea and South Korea, or I should say South Korea and North Korea.
Right.
How do you convince a skeptic that Israel is the kind of place that is worth defending relative to its enemies?
Well, in many cases, I don't know that you can. I mean, is there anything you can say to Dave Smith to get his head screwed on straight? I don't think so at this point. I mean, it's not an unawareness of facts is unlikely to be his problem. There's something else going on there. I don't know what that is, but
registration is now open for the region's largest design and contract manufacturer.
So I think it's worth admitting that in many cases it's a hopeless project. In other cases, the first thing to point out is that people have been the victim of really a kind of a psyop, right? I mean, there's just been a deluge of misinformation and disinformation, half truths and lies and exaggerations, and it's all aimed in one direction, and the asymmetry of it. I mean, just I guess it could be anticipated just by dint of numbers. I mean, there's only 15 million Jews on Earth, and there are 2 billion Muslims. So what do you expect TikTok to look like in the aftermath of October 7th? But I think it's more than that, right? There's also anti-Semitism that has been engineered and weaponized in ways that we could talk about. There's also whatever the algorithms have done or been led to do for whatever reason. But the bias is extraordinary, and the level of deception is extraordinary, right? So, we have people walking around with facts in their heads that are not facts, right? There are people who think that Israel has perpetrated a genocide in Gaza, right? And they think they're using the word genocide correctly, right? So they think the Israelis are in fact the new Nazis, right? So that something in Gaza is akin to what happened in a death camp like Treblinka, right? I mean, that's what they think is real. They think there was a famine in Gaza, right? They think that the Israelis stopped food shipments to such a degree that, you got people dying of starvation in Gaza, right? They believe they've seen pictures of this, right? They've seen pictures from the Syrian civil war that they thought were, depicted suffering and death in Gaza, right? So I'm not saying there hasn't been tremendous suffering and death in Gaza, but if in fact it is true that the IDF faced a challenge, an urban warfare challenge of a sort that no society has ever faced, and they met that challenge at least as scrupulously, if not more scrupulously, than we ever fought jihadists in any.
Yes, was not a genocide in Gaza. That's been debunked by experts, one including John Spencer. So I would encourage you to look up his work and what he has said about that, and the lengths that Israel went to minimize civilian casualties in a very chaotic environment meant to cause chaos and disruption.
Anything like an analogous urban warfare set in any of our wars, right? If in fact of course, collateral damage is going to happen, and of course, even some isolated war crimes will happen. I would expect both of those things to happen in any war. But if it is in fact true that the IDF has been better behaved, or at least as well behaved as Americans or Brits or any other Western power has been in anything like an analogous situation, admitting that there really has been no analogous situation. We're talking about a society that used its own civilians as human shields and kept hundreds of hostages in tunnels. If all that's true, then what are we talking about here? What is this double standard that's being applied to Israel, right? And to get out of the identity politics of it all, and to dissect out these seemingly relevant variable of Judaism and the Jewish state, which is in fact not relevant at all from my point of view, I would just say that if an analogous thing had happened in Western Europe, I mean, if Denmark had a similar atrocity perpetrated against it, right? If some jihadist death cult had murdered 1,200 Danes and taken 250 hostage, right? Everything I've said in the aftermath of October 7th, I would have said it'd be a modulo of the changes to applying to Denmark, right? Just the Danes should have done exactly what the IDF did, or I mean, there's no that's the standard I judge all of this by, right? There's no special concern about Israel because it's a Jewish state from my point of view. I'm talking about open societies and their enemies, and the worst enemies of open societies in our lifetime.
He's talking about good versus evil. I mean, that's the idea. It's good versus evil, and some people are so confused and bankrupt in their values that they don't know what's good and what's evil, what's right and what's wrong.
Are jihadists. They're not the only enemies, but I think they're the worst. And Israel really is that, because of where it is the tip of the spear for this conflict, and that's why we should be a loyal ally of this country, right? I mean, what's in how is it in the American interest to support Israel? It's in the interest of every open society to win a civilizational war against jihadism, right? That full stop. That explains everything from my point of view. It's not that